my studio. This is Emma on another, oh dare I say it, another fantastic day. We're just having the most beautiful weather at the moment and I'm so grateful. It really lifts your spirits. There may be all sorts of things happening. Oh, did you hear the geese just joining in? They're just agreeing with me that it's really lovely out there today. All the blossoms out, all the May has been flowering. Oh, yes, Demelza, quite so. It's just a beautiful day and I'm so grateful that you're here with me. We're just going to have a fun time today. I think we're going to be playing with these beautiful blue fabrics. I don't know exactly what's going to come from this picture at all, so we're just going to see what's going to happen with these beautiful blue fabrics today, see where this journey is going to take us. And if anybody's new to the channel, I must explain a little bit. I work in a slightly wacky way, I think, these days. Anybody who's known me from years ago would know I used to be very organised and I had it all planned out and everything was, you know, seamlessly put together. Now I'm just letting go of control with what I'm making and I'm just seeing what happens with the fabrics. It's wonderful because they're telling me stories and they're taking me on journeys that I would never have thought to go on. And it's making my textile art so much more interesting, I think, much more exciting. It's because it's an unknown. It's like life. When, you know, life is full of unknowns, isn't it? And sometimes that's a bit scary. Sometimes it's exciting. See, the geese are telling me. They're really chatty this morning. It's so lovely when they're outside. It's just like company for me. So they're just lovely to have around anyway. So today, what was I going to talk to you about today? I have absolutely no idea. So I don't know what your week's been like, but it's been a beautiful week here. As I say, the weather's been terrific. And I've actually been doing outside jobs. I've been doing some gardening, a bit of scything, cutting back things, chopping back things that I don't really want in the garden. I have to say our garden's pretty, my husband describes it as, he describes it as benign neglect, our garden. Because it's mostly just wild actually. It's got wilder and wilder as the years have gone on and I've stopped fighting it. I used to try and tackle things like ground elder and now I just appreciate it for the flowers that come with it because actually they set off some of the geraniums and things that I've got in the border for that particular bit. And it's no good, I can't fight it all. Things will come and I will do what I can. So I've been actually tackling a little bit. I've just been cutting back a couple of things that were not very welcome, shall we say. Most things are welcome, but some things just take over. So I've just been cutting them back a little bit. And in my front garden, I had a little area where some stones, we've got like big slabby stones, I don't know what you call them, big chunky stones sort of edging a path. Just a very small area and they got pushed down. They weren't laid properly in the first place, I have to say. They were just plopped on top of the soil. So they haven't lasted very well. And so what I've done is I've gone out with a little bit of mortar, a little bit of dry mix and a bit of mortaring trowel in the lovely sunshine yesterday and got those sort of laid down on a proper bed and they'll stay hopefully now in place. So that was very satisfying. Just a tiny little job that had been lurking and hanging around for weeks, months, years even, and now it's done. And that's really good, isn't it? Tick in the box for that one. Much more interestingly, we're much more interested in what's going to happen with these pieces of fabric today. So let's turn the camera down, let you see what's going on here, and we'll get on. Okay, so here we go. I'm trying to show you as much of this as I can because obviously it's a long, tall, vertical piece. And I've just cut myself some strips, very simple. As I showed you in my last video, just some nice wonky strips and I'm not even going to bother ironing them because they're going to go into my embellishing machine and I think most of them are fine for that. So at the moment I've only got 4 colours. In fact I may have to cut a little bit more of this one, I haven't possibly cut enough of that one. And I'm just going to try laying them out. And I was going to say that if you're wanting to start any composition like this, and obviously it doesn't have to be as big as this. Say you wanted to do, somebody asked about doing a field of lavender and I thought, well, it's not something I particularly want to do myself, but if you apply the same principle as this, is you choose your colours and you can cut some simple strips and depending on obviously how big a piece you're doing as to how wide you cut your strips, so they don't have to be as big as this. These are big because I'm doing a bigger piece. And you can lay them out, you know, vertically, you can lay them out horizontally, and just play around with the colours. Cut your colours, choose your colours. So I've chosen these. If you're going to do a field of lavender, you choose the colours for that. So greens and lilacs and purples. There might be some yellows. I don't know, whatever's in your field, in your head or in your picture. And just cut your fabrics and start playing with them. If you've got an embellishing machine, so much the better, because you'll be able to sort of, you know, really mix the colours up. But it's the same principle. It's about choosing some colours, choosing some fabrics, and cutting them and playing with them until you get them to where you want them to be. So I'm not quite sure where we're starting with this one at all. Whether I'm going to just plonk some down and just have a go. I'm just going to play around and see what's going to come. See, the minute you start putting your fabrics together like this, you can start to tell a story. It's all you're doing really, is you're telling a story. You're trying to show the world, or yourself, or the world, or whatever, a vision of something that you've seen or you've experienced, and you're using your colours, your fabrics to tell a story. And somebody else may get a slightly different story from what you're telling. That's absolutely okay, because they'll interpret it in their own way. But you're just playing around, and the most important thing is just have a bit of fun with it. You know, don't be too, don't worry about it. This is, you know, there's so much else in life to worry about, isn't there? So don't worry about what you're doing with your creativity. It's meant to be playing. I always think, you look at children. I was with my little nephew at the weekend, and he's like 3.5, and he's sitting there at the meal table with his sunglasses on. You know how it is when you're 3.5. You want to wear your sunglasses while you're eating your sandwich, and these kids, they just go off and play, and they do stuff, and they just don't see the world like we do. And I think it's time we all behaved like our inner 3.5-year-old or 5-year-old or whatever. See, that's beginning to tell some kind of a story. It may not be the story I end up with, but by playing with the fabrics, I'm beginning to see how each fabric works in relation with the other, and depending on what you put next to each other, as to what you get. So if you put that in there, you see, you get a different story. If I just say do something like that, you can see how that kind of calms it down, tones it down. If you were just to use all the pale colours, but then the minute you put the darker colour in, and you have this sort of lovely tan colour, you're getting a different story going on. This could be waves coming up the beach now, rather than just being out at sea. Supposing this might well be a seascape, as I'm feeling it might well be, as it's kind of those colours, you know. So it's playing with the fabrics until this, as I say, they start to tell the story that you want to tell, and you will know, because inside you, you'll suddenly go, ooh, yes, I like that. That's how I want it to be. And don't overthink it, don't overdo it, just play until something you just like it, you just like the look of it. You know, it's as simple as that. It's your story, tell it your way, just like in life. I think art is so like life, really, because, you know, when you allow yourself just to have the time to play and be creative, so many wonderful things can come out of it, and you get such joy from it. And if we all just played around in life a bit more, I think life could be so much more fun. Right, so I'm just going to do a little bit more playing with it like this, because it's quite tricky to do this and show you on camera and actually tune into my inner sort of knowing, if you like, when I'm trying to do this on camera. So I'm going to just come off camera for a minute or two, and I will just have a play with this until I get it to sort of how I feel it wants to be. Yeah, so I'm just messing about here still. I haven't quite decided how it's all going to be, but this is what you can do with your compositions. Play with your fabrics, move things around. So you could take, say, something like that. You could be saying, well, I'm going to have some rocks and beachy stuff down here in the sort of foreground, but you might also, you know, want to put this somewhere further up and have an island out at sea, if this was a seascape. I'm not sure it's going to be a seascape, I don't know. I'm not fully at that juncture yet. But as I say, it's about playing around. You might want to cut, you know, thinner pieces of fabric. So if you cut that into half, you know, that might make thinner little bits. You don't have to do big thick fabric like this. I'm doing these obviously quite big because it's a biggish piece. So I think lots of little fabrics would be very fiddly. But if you're working on a smaller scale than this, by all means, you know, cut smaller pieces, but check out how much, if you're using an embellisher, just check out how much that embellisher is going to kind of scrunch the fabrics up, okay, because you might find you'll get gaps. So some of these fabrics will scrunch definitely more than others, and that means you have to kind of accommodate that and add more fabrics in. You know, pin your composition down when you think you're happy with it, and then you can either embellish it, or this one, certainly something like this, you could very easily just do with your sewing machine. You might not want to embellish it. You might want to keep these lovely shiny fabrics exactly as they are, because once you embellish something, it really does change the surface. It changes the fabric hugely, and you might not want that, you see. So an embellishing machine is wonderful, but you might not actually like the effects of it on all of your pieces. So I'm just going to play around a little bit more with this, and I think I will then know better where I'm going with it. Okay, so here I am sitting at my embellishing machine. I've got this is my background fabric. This is my cotton curtain interlining fabric, which I use quite a lot these days. I find it very easy and soft to embellish into. If you haven't come across an embellishing machine before, this machine's got 12 sharp barbed needles. If you've done any hand needle felting, you'll know what I'm talking about. And these needles simply punch fabric through from this top fabric into the bottom fabric, and it meshes it together. It felts it together, if you like. It hasn't got any threads. And it's the most wonderful machine because it's very versatile. It helps you to make all sorts of interesting surfaces. It blends your colours. It does wonderful things. But as I say, you don't have to have one. You can do just as well with a sewing machine and do lots of lovely stitching and mix your fabrics up with stitching instead. So I'm going to pop this piece on here. Now what I'm doing is I'm thinking about my edges. So I'm going to allow a little bit of the fabric just to stick over the top, because I know this is going to scrunch, and I'm not sure exactly how much it's going to scrunch. If you want to check out before you do your embellishing, you could take, a little sample and make yourself a sample and see how much your fabric is going to scrunch up. So right, let's get going. I'll put the machine on and let's have action. Oh, hang on a minute, what have I done? Oh, I'll tell you what. Just bear with. Okay, sorry about that. My machine wasn't even plugged in, so now we've got it switched on and plugged in. We're good to go. There we go. Right, here we go. Now, action. So you can see that's already making a lovely surface. I can see it's going to take quite a lot of fabric if it's going to scrunch up that much. But I just love it. I love it how it makes this lovely texture. And if you're new to embellishing, you just work from one end to the other. You work top down, or you can work from the middle outwards. But you have to try and accommodate this fabric, because once it starts scrunching like that, you've got to kind of work with that slowly, so that all the scrunching gets evenly distributed. All those little wrinkles get sort of absorbed. And as I say, if you start with your edge, then you know exactly what fabric you've got left for turning it over. Or if you want to leave your edges like these lovely ribbon-like edges, all ruffled and raggedy. Then that's going to be a choice you can make. But look at that, you see, you could even be you don't have to embellish the whole fabric down. You could be making lovely effects. If you wanted to make a seascape with lovely ruched sort of waves, don't embellish all of it down. Let them stick up like that, and then you've got a lovely effect. I think I'm actually going to embellish them all the way down. Now that is not got quite as much to turn under as the other bits have, so I'm going to actually do the magic trick that you just pull it off. If you put something down that you don't like, or it's not where you want it, or you need to move it for any reason, you can just move it and re-embellish it. Now some fabrics will start to disintegrate if you over embellish them, so what you have to be sort of judicious with your embellishing. Don't overdo it and wreck your surfaces, unless you actually really want a nice distressed surface. It could be exactly what you want. You want lots of texture to it, that's the way to go. So we'll show that on the other side now. You can see all the little bits of the blue fabric are pushing up through the backing, and that's what you want. And you also want it to be fairly even. Obviously it does pull in a little bit, you know, it does ruckle a little bit, and you can see where I've embellished bits more than others. So you're kind of going for an even embellishing so that you've got an even layered surface to work into. So we're going to put another piece of fabric on there, which I think might be another piece of this, like this, and I'll just keep calm and carry on, and I'll show you it a little bit further down the track. So I've put these two pieces down on here now, and I've got a little bit of a gap there. I think you might be able to see, and obviously you can see what it does to the fabrics. It really does, depending on what kind of fabric is, as to what it actually does. And obviously you can kind of over embellish that. You could actually take those little bits and just embellish it down again a bit more. So I've decided I've cut myself a really thin strip of this. I'm just going to trim this end up a bit because it's a little bit, got a bit of extra, it's got a bit of a seam on it there that I don't want. So I'm just going to sort of pop this in the middle, and it can just become like a bit of light on the water. And I think we'll do it that way, I think. And again, it's going to shrink up, so we'll pop it on. Just put my needles up. You always must put your needles up. It's the same as your sewing machine. You must put your needles up in between times. I'm just going to trim that little bit off because it's made it a little bit wispier than I would like. I'm just going to actually trim those bits off. So there we go. We've made, it's almost like a little bit of light going across here now, which is nice. It's a bit like painting, really, I think, when you're using fabrics in this fashion, when you're cutting strips or cutting little pieces, you're just kind of painting with the colours, really, and seeing what colour wants to go next, which is kind of what I'm doing with this. You can either, there's two choices, I think. You can either, no, not two choices. There's a choice, isn't there? You can either set it all out to start with and work your own, you know, set your own composition out before you start with and work meticulously from that composition, and that's wonderful. It's a really nice way to do it, and you get the pleasure of laying it out and playing around till you get it how you want it. I'm actually just going to pin this on because it's a little bit moving around, this bit. But then also you can do it, which is kind of what I'm doing this morning, is I'm just picking up the pieces and kind of composing it as I'm going. Oh, I know what it's like. It's just popped into my head. It's like Quilt As You Go. If anybody's done Quilt As You Go, it's kind of a bit like that. I'm designing as I go rather than setting it all out in stone to start with. I'm actually just picking up the pieces and just going, where shall I put this piece on now? How would that look? So really I'm kind of letting go a bit of control. I'm controlling it, obviously, because I'm holding the pieces of fabric and I'm doing the embellishing and I'm going to do the stitching. So I'm controlling it, if you like, from that point of view, but I'm letting go a little bit on the composition, just saying, well, let's see. Let's do it as we go. If you're pinning and doing embellishing, please take your pins out before you get anywhere near it with the machine, because you really don't want to be breaking needles, or, you know, it could be quite dangerous. So make sure you take your pins out. Okay, so this is as far as I've got just now. It's not a huge amount, but it's a slow process, which I do enjoy, and I'm just going to keep choosing fabrics and embellishing them down, and I will show you when I'm further down the track, which I think will probably be in the next video, and we'll see what we're going to do with it next. So thanks very much indeed for joining me here in my studio. As always, it's a delight to have you here, and I will look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a really lovely week. Bye for now.